Welcome back. Hope everybody's having a good day. Today we're going to do section 2.5, which is on parallel and perpendicular lines. So a couple pages of some problems that you'll be finding for your homework assignment for this section. Alright, so again, I know we're still kind of early on in the course, so you should have printed these pages out and you should be filling in these notes with me as we go, to make sure that you remember how to do all this and jot down any information that will help you get through your homework. Alright, so today we're going to start with parallel lines, again, then look at perpendicular, and then kind of going through a couple of other problems on a combination of those. So first off, the definition of parallel lines as it states up here at the top of your notes. Parallel lines are two lines that are always the same distance apart and never touch. Parallel lines are lines that have the same slope. These lines never intersect and always maintain the same distance apart. Therefore, two non-vertical lines with slopes M1 and M2 are parallel if and only if M1 equals M2. So again, in mathematical terms, that's what it looks like, the definition. But for you guys, remember that all parallel lines have to have the same slope. That's it. So for number one, show that the lines y equals negative 2/3 x minus 1 and the line 4x plus 6y equals 12 are parallel. To prove or to show that two lines are parallel, you have to show that they have the same slope. So for the first equation, it's already solved for y. Okay, negative 2/3 x minus 1. So that slope is negative 2/3. Okay, so that one was kind of done for us. So now we need to take the second equation, solve it for y, and see what its slope equals. So we're going to start with 4x plus 6y equals 12. Remember, it's basically a two-step process. We're going to take the x term, move it over to the other side by taking the opposite. So 6y equals negative 4x plus 12. Then we're going to divide every term by 6. Okay, divide everything by 6. So we end up with y equals negative 4/6, which will reduce to negative 2/3, plus, and 12 divided by 6, which is 2. So this slope is also negative 2/3, okay, right here. So we've shown that both lines have the same slope. So these are in fact parallel. So we showed that. Okay? Alright. Now let's talk about perpendicular lines. So perpendicular lines in the box here says that they are two lines that intersect in such a way that they have a right angle or a 90-degree angle between them. The slopes of the two perpendicular lines are negative reciprocals of each other. This means that if a line is perpendicular to a line that has a slope of m, then the slope of that line would be negative 1/m. Another way to think about that is that the product of the two slopes must equal negative 1. So it's kind of, depends on how you learned it. I put everything in this box that you could have possibly learned about slopes. Some of you learned that it was called the negative reciprocal. Some of you learn that the product is negative 1, so it just kind of depends on how you learned it. If you have forgotten, then I'll talk about both ways and you can kind of choose the way that you want to. But basically, the slopes of any two lines that are perpendicular have to have the opposite sign, so one has to be positive and one has to be negative, and then they have to be the reciprocal of one another. Okay? So, whatever how you kind of look at that, you can kind of do it any way you want to. Alright, so let's kind of talk about this number 2. Show that these two lines are perpendicular. So 3x minus 6y equals 12, 2x plus y equals 4. So we're going to solve both for y. So I'm going to start with the first one. 3x minus 6y equals negative 12. Move the x term over. So it's going to become negative 3x when I move it over. And then I'm going to divide everything by negative 6. So we end up with y equals negative 3 divided by negative 6 is 1/2 x. Negative 12 divided by negative 6 is a positive 2. So here's the slope of the first line. All right, so that means if this is 1/2, then the slope of this line has to be a negative and then 2/1. So this slope has to be -2. Okay, if it's not -2, then they can't be perpendicular. All right, so solve this one for y. This one's pretty straightforward. Okay, so just move the x term over, so we end up with y equals -2x plus 4. So there is that slope. So if you look at those, you can see that those are the negative reciprocals of one another. Okay, so those are indeed perpendicular. Okay, so this is 1/2. -2 is the same thing as -2/1. So those are perpendicular. Okay. Okay. So I think the biggest mistake I see with students is you forget that the signs have to be opposite. So if this was 1/2 and this was a positive 2/1, those would not be perpendicular and they would not be parallel. So just be careful with that. All right, number 3. Find the equation of a line in standard form that is parallel to this line and goes through the point 3, -5. Okay, so remember, this is a point. So here's your x1, y1. Anytime you're given a point, those are your x1, y1 values. So we need to find the equation of a line in standard form that's parallel to this line. Well, we already have a point that we can use. What we don't have is a slope. So we just have to find the slope of this line, and then I know that I can use that slope because my line is parallel to this line. All right, so we're going to just solve this for y. We'll do it right here underneath. So we're going to move the 2x over to the other side. Becomes negative. And then we're going to divide everything by 4. Okay, so that gives me y equals -2 divided by 4 is -1/2. And then 1/4 is just 1/4. But more importantly, my line is parallel to this line. So I want to use the slope of -1/2. Okay, because those are parallel. So here's my line, the information for my line. Okay, so we did this on the last video. Since I have a point and a slope, I want to start with my point slope formula. Okay, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Substitute in your x1, y1 values and your slope value. So y minus y1 is -5 equals m, which is -1/2, and then x minus x1 is 3. All right, so let's put this in standard form. So this side will be y plus 5, right? Minus a negative is positive. Let's distribute the -1/2 through. So -1/2 times x is -1/2 x. -1/2 times -3 is a positive 3/2. Since we have fractions, we got to get rid of fractions for standard form. We're going to multiply every term by the common denominator, which is 2. Multiply everything by 2, so that's 2y plus 10 equals, and then these 2's are going to cancel out, so we're ending up with -1x, which is just -x, plus 3. Okay, so I multiplied this by 2, multiplied this by 2, multiplied this by 2, and multiplied this by 2. Alright, so now, standard form, the x has to come here and the 10 has to go there. Okay, so I'm going to do that all in one step. I'll walk you through it. So we're going to take this -x over to this side. It'll become positive. Okay, so moving in front of the y. And then instead of writing plus 10, I'm going to move it over here to this side. So it's going to move to be a -10. So 3 minus 10 on the right side would be -7. So there's your standard form. And that line has the same slope as this line. So they're parallel. Oops. Okay. So these lines are parallel to one another. This is standard form. Okay. All right, let's look at the next page. see what they're asking us over here for number 4. All right, number 4 says, find the equation of a line that's perpendicular to the line y equals negative 5x plus 2 and passes through the point 3, negative 1. This time it wants us to write our answer in slope-intercept form. So remember, number 3, it asks to write the answer in standard form. All right, so here's my point, x1, y1. Okay. Now, my line has to be perpendicular to this line. So the slope of this line is negative 5, right? That's the slope. So my slope has to be perpendicular. So I'm going to use this upside down T in math. That's perpendicular. That's the symbol for perpendicular. So the perpendicular slope, okay, so line perpendicular slope to negative 5 would be a positive 1/5. Okay, remember, the sign is going to be opposite, and you're going to make this a reciprocal, so this is 5 over 1. So that means your slope would be 1 over 5. Okay, so this line is perpendicular slope to this line. All right, so same thing. I have a point and I have a slope, so I am going to start with point slope form, just like the last problem. Okay, so we're going to substitute in our x1, y1, and m. So we'll have y minus, y1 is negative 1, equals, slope is 1/5, and then x1 is 3. Alright, so let's multiply that, clean that up. So minus a negative is plus 1, and then 1/5 times x is 1/5 x, 1/5 times negative 3, negative 3/5. Now I have to write this in slope-intercept form, so all I have to do is subtract 1 to this side. Okay, so y equals 1/5 x. Now I'm going to subtract 1 from negative 3/5. Again, I'm going to do it over here. Negative 3/5 minus 1. You can do that in your calculator or get a common denominator. So negative 3/5 minus 5/5. 5/5 is 1, so that would give you negative 8/5. Okay, so that is slope-intercept form. I don't have to put it in standard form. So that would be my answer. And by the way, since if you're using your calculator, I just want to go through with you. So let's say you were putting this in, negative 3/5 minus 1. So if you're doing your calculator and you put in negative 3 divided by 5, like that, and then minus 1, you're going to end up with a fraction. So remember, to switch it back, you would hit math and then choose number 1, which is fraction. So I'm going to hit number 1 and then enter. And that's where you get the negative 8/5. Okay? So in case you have forgotten how to use the calculator in the fractions, that's how you can get it without having to do the common denominator. I know some of you don't like that. So I'm fine. You know, you can use your calculator on everything. So just make sure you know how to use it. All right, number 5. Find the equation of a line in standard form for a line that's perpendicular to x equals 7 and it passes through the point 11, negative 3. All right, so this is one of those that you don't really have to do any work, but some of you, if you don't understand it, kind of wouldn't know where to start. So think about this. Perpendicular to the line x equals 7. Well, x equals 7, remember that's a vertical line. Go to 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Here is x equals 7. It's a vertical line right there. So a line that's perpendicular to this line would have to be a horizontal line, right? And horizontal lines are always the equation y equals. Well, remember when you write a horizontal line, you do y equals whatever the y value is. So I know that this answer would be y equals negative 3. But let's say you forgot that. So if you remember that this is a vertical line, then just look at this point, 11, negative 3. If I plot that point, here's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So here's 11, negative 3. There's the point, 11, negative 3. Your line has to go through this point and it has to be perpendicular to this line. So it has to be a horizontal line, right? And that horizontal line, well, if I drew my points right, would go through -3 right here. Okay, so horizontal lines are always y equals that number. So the better you get at knowing your horizontal and vertical lines, the easier some of these questions will be, because you would be able to see right off the bat that that's a vertical line, and then you would kind of know what to do for there. Okay? All right, number 6. Given the following equations, determine if they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither. All right, so we have two separate lines, and you got to find them. So here's the first one. There's a lot of work to be done here. And then here's the second line, right? So we're going to take each one individually, solve them for y, so we can see what the slopes are. So we got a little bit of work to do, and it's good algebra, so we'll see how your simplifying is. All right, so we're going to start with this equation. So remember, this minus sign when there's a parentheses is an invisible 1 there, -1. So you're going to multiply both of these terms by -1, and then we have to distribute the 5 over here. All right, so we have 4, and then -1 times 4y is -4y. -1 times 2x is -2x, and that's going to equal 5x minus 5y. Okay? So remember, we're solving for y, So the first thing I would want to do is take this -2x and bring it over here. I need the x's on the right hand side. So a -2x, when I move it over, will become positive 2x. So 5x plus 2x will be 7x. So that's what I'm going to do first. So I'm going to leave the 4 minus 4y there and make this 7x minus 5y. Okay? So I took the -2x, moved it over here. Next thing I'm going to do is take this 5y, which is negative, and bring it over here, because I need my y's on the left. So since it's a -5y here, it's going to become positive 5y over here. So a -4y and a positive 5y would be a positive 1y, which is just y. So now on this side, I have 4 plus y equals 7x. And then the last thing I can do is take the 4, move it over here, it'll become negative. So y equals 7x minus 4. So that means the slope of this line is 7. Okay? So now I got to find the slope of this line and see if it's 7, then it would be parallel. If it's -1/7, then it would be perpendicular. And if it's anything other than that, it would be neither. Alright, so I'm going to rewrite this over here since I can't go underneath it. So y plus 5 equals 8 plus 7x. Alright, so all I have to do for this one is move the 5 over here. So if I subtract the 5 to the 8, I get 3. And then I'm going to rewrite that right side so the 7x comes first, because that's the way we write it. The x term usually comes first, then the number. So there's the slope of that line, 7. So I know that these lines are parallel. Same slope. Okay? So a little bit of work, but you got to be real careful, because if you make one little mistake, obviously that's going to throw off your answers. So just take your time with simplifying and moving things around. Alright, the last problem. Given the following equations, determine if these lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So same thing. Alright, so look at your two equations. Here's one. I always do this because when they're long like this, it's kind of easy to get them mixed up or to forget something when you're solving. Alright, so let's do this one first. All I have to do is move the x term over to the right, and then I got to do some division. Okay, so let me rewrite it. Alright, so the first thing, let's take that positive 3x and move it over here. It's going to become a -3x. And then I'm going to divide everything by -2. No, watch your signs. I'm going to divide by -2. So -2 divided by -2 is y. Okay. And then -3 divided by -2 is a positive 3/2 x. 10 divided by -2 is -5. So here's your slope, positive 3/2. Alright, that's the slope for the first line. So now we have to find the slope for the second line, see how it compares. So remember, if you get a slope of 3/2, it'll be parallel. If you get a slope of -2/3, it'll be perpendicular, and anything else will be neither. So take your time. Alright, so I'm going to rewrite this, just so I have some room. Okay, first thing, distribute. Get rid of those parentheses. You're multiplying -3 times each of these numbers. So 3x, -3 times x is -3x. -3 times 1 is -3. 3y minus 2x. 3x minus 3x is gone, that's 0. So now I have -3 equals 3y minus 2x. Okay, I need the y on this side, and I need the number over here. So I'm going to start with moving this 3y over to the left, so that's -3y minus 3 equals -2x. Now I'm going to take the -3, move it to this side, it will become positive. Okay, and now I'm going to divide everything by -3. -3, -3. So -3 divided by -3 is 1, so that's y. -2 divided by -3 is a positive 2/3 x. And 3 divided by -3 is 1. So the slope here is 2/3. Those are not negative reciprocals. They're both positive numbers. So this one would be neither. That's a very common mistake. A lot of you, not a lot, some of you might write perpendicular. But remember, to be perpendicular, you have to have one positive and one negative number. Okay? So yeah, they're reciprocals, but one is not negative. So again, you lose a sign in here, you're going to say, you're going to get the wrong answer. So you got to be real careful. Take your time when you solve these. Alright, so that'll get you through your homework for section 2.5. Again, start on it now. Hopefully you are done with your assignments for 2.3 and 2.4. and you are working on this one. Okay, my suggestion will always be to work on your homework today and no later than tomorrow to get it done, so this stuff is fresh in your mind. Okay, all right, so keep up with your work, keep up with your calendar, and do these sections on the day that I assigned it, because otherwise you're going to find, as we move into this semester, you're going to run into some big problems because there's a lot of information. Right now we're doing a lot of review, but that will not be the case. So please, please, please keep up, and please email me as soon as you see that you don't understand something. Do not wait. Okay? All right. Have a good rest of the day, and I'll see you back here next time.